Bet you didn't think I had a second pair of overalls. Well, I do. And they're really nice and warm. It's gets a little chilly down here when we do biology in the basement. You know, when you don't have this much hair, it's a tough fight not to wear a winter hat when I do these broadcasts. Hopefully the weather will turn soon. But anyways, welcome to Biology in the Basement with your host, Mr. Andraco. We are moving on. Like I said, homeostasis, our new magic word that we are going to be focusing on. I've been hinting at it all year, and we're going to look at it through our human body. So let's have a fact of the day so that we can get started. And it turns out that the movie Titanic cost more than the building of the original ship, the Titanic. And yes, that is adjusted from today's money to early 1900s money. So yes, the movie cost more than the actual ship did back in its day. All right, one thing that I did not mention in the lecture yesterday is we are back using the notes again, right, in your yellow books. So this is technically N32, so we only just had to write a couple things real quick at the top for N32, and then the rest of this is what we'll be talking about today, right? Your homework was up to 149. And so we're moving on, right? Just talking about the purpose of the body systems, which is the format that we're going to go by. And that is to maintain homeostasis. Your body is a team of teams who are all working together to keep your cells happy. Why do we want to keep ourselves happy? Is because that's when they work the best. So whether it's you setting the thermometer to a nice temperature, right, so that you can work your best, or whether it's your liver and your pancreas working together to keep your blood sugar at its best, or whether it's breathing or sweating or whatever you do to keep your cells happy, right? So we have taken a divergence, like I've said, off of our small to big, but we are now back on track. We are going to go back to the specialized cells of the human bodies, the tissues and organs and organisms in our levels of organization. Like I said, we're going to take it through the body system by system. These are all the teams. The first team we're going to look at is digestion. If you remember from your lab on diffusion, our first state lab, diffusion through a membrane, the most important part of digesting large molecules into small molecules was so that they can fit through the cell membrane and enter into cells. So that's what the job of the digestive system is. So we take in food, and technically it just goes right through us. We have an alimentary canal, or GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, which is a tube that just essentially runs through our body. And on this side, those main structures are listed there as the GI tract or alimentary canal. But of course, we need help in digesting and absorption. So we have what are called accessory structures all along the way helping this process. So that's kind of how we organize this. And I know I'm not sure how good the lighting is. I will be sharing this slideshow with you in another day or so. But we'll get to that later. I'm sure you can figure it out from the book. Anyways, we are a well-organized system, needless to say, where we pack a lot of action inside of our abdomen. That's where most of our digestive system is, and it does take up a lot of space in our lower abdomen. But we do have to share space with other organs. Up top here, we have to share space with our lungs. But the other important thing I like to point out here is the setup of the way your throat works. Your pharynx is the section where it uses the epiglottis to cover over your trachea, right? If you can see that your trachea is in the front, right? And then your esophagus, when you swallow, right, that goes down the back. And then your epiglottis covers over your trachea so the food doesn't go down the wrong pipe. But I'm sure we've all had that experience. Excuse me. So, on to the parts. Obviously, we have the mouth, as we've learned earlier this year. Right, there is chemical digestion going on, along with the obvious mechanical chewing of food. But amylase was the name of that enzyme that's in your saliva that helps to break down those carbohydrates. And then you end up with a bolus, or a chewed wad of food. That's what that's actually called. The next step is for you to swallow. Send that bolus down your esophagus. Now, what's interesting is that your esophagus is not just a tube where the food just goes plunk, right? It actually gets moved through special muscles that perform a rhythmic set of contractions called peristalsis. Don't worry, I'll get my esophagus out tomorrow and show you. You'll be really impressed. Anyways, this is how we move food through our body, not just in our esophagus, but all the way around those twists and turns in our intestines as well. Peristalsis is that word, rhythmic contractions that move food through your esophagus as well as your intestines. Then we get to the stomach. Your stomach is not a solid object. Your stomach is more of a muscly bag where it churns up the food and it is still mashing it, as well as exposing it to lots and lots of chemicals, right? You've heard that the contents of your stomach are so acidic they could burn the paint off of your car. Then we get into the absorption and chemical digestion part. You'll see in your homework that there's still a lot of chemical digestion to go when we get to the small intestine, but there is also a lot of absorption taking place at the same time. This is usually where I have to take a deep breath, make a dramatic pause, make sure you're all looking at me, and I tell you about my secret love of surface area. Your small intestine is so good at maximizing space and utilizing surface area with all these little bumps and ridges and finger-like projections called villi, that if you were to actually iron out your small intestine, it would be the same size as a tennis court. I'm not kidding. All of your small intestines, yes, they're 20 feet long, but with all of these bumps and waves and all this extra surface area, trying to control myself here, you have so much room for digestion and absorption. A lot is going on in the small intestine. It's not just cool that it's 20-something feet long in your body, but it also has lots of surface area. And I'll move on. Before we get to the end of this process, we have to go through the large intestine. The main function of the large intestine is to reclaim water. Water is a waste product, as we'll learn, to our body, as well as an obvious resource to our body. It helps to move the food along, or as it's called in this case, chyme, turning into excrement as we reclaim the water. So as it's going up and over, right, transverse, it ascends, it transverses, and then descends before we hold on to it in the last section called the rectum. That is when we hold our feces before it is time to go. Something called egestion, not excretion, not excrement. It is egestion is technically the word. Okay, so other things that are involved in this system, right? Organs make up systems, as we said, are the accessory structures. You've got your pancreas. The pancreas plays many roles, 3 big functions. It helps to produce hormones to regulate the blood sugar, which we'll touch on a lot more in the endocrine system. But the other 2 here are the ones that are specific to the digestive system, and that is making enzymes to help with breakdown, as well as to produce sodium bicarbonate to neutralize the stomach acids. Because you're also producing hydrochloric acid in your stomach, which can burn the paint off of your car. So how do you protect that? Well, you have a layer of sodium bicarbonate inside of your stomach that is protecting it from these acids. So when the acids hit the side of the inside of your stomach, they get neutralized. But when they're mixed with the food, they are digesting. It's a pretty interesting process, and it's pretty cool our body can maintain that balance. Another important organ in the digestive system is your liver. Your liver produces bile, which kind of acts like soap, where it does something called emulsification. It turns big fat droplets into tiny little droplets so they can be absorbed. And when it comes to digesting our food, of course, we do this on 2 levels, right? We've described both of them, where we digest our food on the mechanical level. That's when we're chewing our food and churning it up inside of our stomach. But we also digest our food chemically in our mouths, in our stomachs, and, as you'll see in your homework, our small intestine. And so this is where we're getting our enzymes, our acids, digestive juices. We're neutralizing those. There's a lot going on. But like I said, the original objective of our digestive system is to take those big molecules, big pieces of food, turn them into smaller pieces, smaller molecules, and then small enough molecules so they can pass through our cell membranes and get into our cells, right? We're trying to turn our carbs that are complex carbohydrates, polysaccharides into monosaccharides, proteins into amino acids, because those things can fit into cells, and it is a 2-step process. Thank you, digestive system. And then whatever we can't process or don't have time to process heads out the other end, technically not entering your body, which is interesting. Okay, we'll take a quick break. I will separate this other second half into another lecture where we'll talk about energy and nutrients. So you take a break too. Have a good one.